The gaming backlog is flawed. Recently I was looking through my Steam library and found myself thinking, wow, I have a lot of games to play. Many I bought years ago, but never even got round to playing them once. Others I recently picked up thinking that they were on a great deal and that I needed to pick it up because it was at the wonderful price of less than £7. What it made me think about though is the system that many of us call the backlog. In the world of Booktube, this kind of already exists under the name To Be Read. What both of these have in common is that they are systems that keep track of everything you might be interested in consuming or just interested in, just checking out. In both cases, it's incredibly flawed and causes more issues than it solves. We have very limited time and we must be very selective as to how we want to spend it. I know that I have many games that I want to play, but being selective in what I choose is incredibly valuable, but more that it's being content with my choices as well. So grab a cup of tea and join me today as I talk about how I believe the gaming backlog system is flawed in itself, how companies have a stranglehold over our emotional buying power, and how we can rethink the system that many of us use, and to consider games that we actually want to play and enjoy experiencing them instead of experiencing the final product. Just before that though, if you do enjoy content like this, talking about gaming topics and also games themselves, then make sure to subscribe to the channel. If you want to get early access to videos and behind the scenes as well, then make sure to check out the Patreon, which will be linked down below. Lastly though, I do also have a Discord, so if you are interested in joining our community, we host a monthly game club. This month is, well, as of the time of recording this, I don't know, so it'll be on screen as I'm talking right now. So make sure to come on by, and now let's talk about how the gaming backlog system is flawed, and I believe we can fix it. I felt the need to make this video as gaming is a ever-growing library that brings us loads of different titles that we can check out, but it also loses tons of our time for the sake of entertainment, and we don't even know if we're going to enjoy it. Every single year there are hundreds of games that get released, if not thousands. Depending on the scale of the titles as well, there may be a handful of games that you're even willing to consider being truly worthwhile in playing. What it does a lot of the time, however, is open us up to new stories, new types of games, or just interesting experiences. It brings us to a top 50 list every single year of games that you should check out, that you might be interested in, and it could be the best of the best. But instead, you end up creating some Excel sheet with loads of different titles that you want to check out. Due to the amount of games that do release, it ends up creating a massive backlog of games. From Xbox to PlayStation, from Switch to PC. Every time I boot up any of these, I'm shown about what games I should consider buying, many of which I've heard amazing things about, and sometimes I'll say screw it and pick up the title as it's on a good deal. The issue is that we'll end up no longer thinking about the title. We own it, it's sat in our library, it's waiting to be played, but honestly, you probably just forget you even own it in the first place. This has caused me to feel overwhelmed when it comes to my choice in games and what I want to play next. A lot of the time, I just end up reverting back to old games that I know I loved and enjoyed. It pushes me away from experiencing new games as I find myself not really wanting to spend the time trying to figure out what game out of the thousands that come out, and on top of that, the probably tens of games that I end up picking up in a given year that I'm actually interested in checking out. It creates a never-ending pile of games to play. Maybe you choose to try and take on your backlog, or do what some other YouTubers say that you could do in terms of getting through it. But really, what all of this does is it takes away from you actually enjoying the game that you're playing. Companies like Steam have the perfect business model that functions off of the way that players feel, the FOMO around new releases, or old ones, of what they've been told that they would love. All of it ends in either us not touching the games that we actually want to play, that we might be interested in, as we've got loads of other games that we have to wade through to find the hidden gems that we truly want to play, or we do end up playing them, but only look at them as the thing to tick off the list so that we can move on to the next game, so that we can hit that end point possibly down the line where we can say, you've played all of the games on your backlog. I want to talk about each of these different areas individually and go over how I believe all of them affect us in some way when it comes to playing games, and how they take away from this connection that you can have to a title, and also how all of it connects to the backlog. Then I also intend to provide you with a system that allows you to disconnect from all the noise and just enjoy the next set of games that you wish to play or pick up. One of the biggest flaws that I've seen within the gaming backlog system is the lack of enjoyment that you can truly get from a game. This goes the same as well for books. When you're playing a game simply because it's on your backlog, not because it's the right time to be playing it, you don't end up enjoying it as much as you thought you might have. One of the big themes I focus on in many of my videos is actually being focused on how a game makes us feel instead of how they play. With the backlog system, we end up doing what the name explains itself to be doing, which is systematizing your gaming experience. This could be an amazing plus and a great way to play games that you haven't ever done that maybe are smaller in scope than what you typically would pick up, or just focusing on a completely different genre that you've never tried out before. But there's also the high chance that you end up focusing on a never-ending goal of completing through your backlog and just ticking off a game for the sake of it. It means for someone like me who wants to play through God of War, Cyberpunk, and the DLCs of The Witcher 3, I can find myself saying that, you know what, I'm going to play it in the next 3 to 5 games. However, there's a key difference between what I'm saying and what you'll see online. Many will discuss the backlog as if it's something to climb through. It's something that you need to wade your way through so that you can say that you've played all of the games that are sitting on it. Maybe it has an underlying desire to experience all of these titles that you believe that you're going to love. But when you're playing something solely because it sits on a list that you're going through, it makes the experience focused on the end point. That end point is completing the game so that you can just move on to the next one. This can cause us to play games as fast as possible, not explore their worlds, or just take in the information that we're meant to be taking in, as our main goal, as I said a moment ago, is to just get through the game and complete it as fast as possible. I found myself not necessarily doing this in the context of the gaming backlog, but in the desire to make videos. When I first played through Red Dead Redemption 2 properly back in 2022, I found myself really enjoying the experience. I was so wrapped up in the story and wanted to make a video about the game as well, I found myself completing the game entirely with the epilogue as well within 32 hours. This meant that on my first playthrough, I didn't experience the world I was exploring properly. I didn't do too much in the way of side content. I also didn't do too much hunting outside of what the game forced you to do. And I ended up just spending most of my time focused on the main story, which isn't a bad thing in itself, as again, I was really wrapped up in where the story was going. But when I play games, I look towards the idea of feeling as if I'm experiencing the game that they've tried to build and show us, instead, of doing that entire system, which is just rushing through it for the sake of making a video. My first playthrough of this outstanding game was so focused in taking in the story that it was so well known for and wanting to make a video out of it that I overlooked many other aspects of the game and didn't allow myself to sit within them. This is the feeling that many of us have when you're simply just doing something for the sake of the end result. This happens in creative endeavors too, when all of it's leading to the same thing, an overall lack of enjoyment in the moment for what you're doing and experiencing, and the lack of thoughtfulness and gratitude at what you're actually being able to do. And it ends up causing issues as well whilst we're playing games. It's the process of effectively rushing to the end point simply for the satisfaction of ticking it off your list later on. It's a flawed process, however, not just because you can't enjoy games truly in this way, but also because the list itself is never ending. So much to do, so little time. It's a saying that many of us have probably heard of before, and it's a saying that's been around for a very long time, and it accurately maps on to pretty much everything. It's why intentionality is so pivotal. If you're going to go through and torture yourself to play a game like CS or Valorant, and then do it intentionally at the very least. Allow yourself to sit there for an allotted amount of time or allotted amount of games, and then come off. Don't overstay your mind's welcome, and just start doing some other things. We can use this idea in every domain of life, but in gaming, it's definitely true. With games, they've often got longer and longer over the last 2 decades, with some titles being a 10-hour great story and others being released at 60+ hours of bloatfest. It means that we end up dealing with an issue of free time we have available, minus the hours that we have to put towards playing games, and then choosing obviously the titles that you actually want to play out of the plethora of releases. In 2004, roughly 72 games released, already a game for every 5 days that we have in the year. Last year though, over 12,000 games released. That is 33 games a day. No wonder why our backlog is getting bigger and bigger at such a rate that it becomes literally impossible to ever catch up. I know what many people would probably say as a response to this, which is, well, not many people are going to be playing even 10% of those games, which is fair enough as a statement, but we can then compare it to, when we were kids. For a lot of us, we only found out about games because our friends were playing them and they told us about them at school, or, maybe you were on some random YouTube channel back then who was talking about it. We might have known about maybe 15 games in a given year that were releasing, and maybe only getting to play about 2 to 3 of them in a given year. Now you can load up YouTube and get told about the top 10 games of all time. The next video will be about the top 50 games that are coming out in the first half of the year, and the games to be looking out for the next half of the year. You then get into even more and more niche communities where they have recommendations 5-fold for every single game that that you like. It does mean that we have an amazing ability to experience more and gain more of what we love. However, it also means that you can get very easily overwhelmed by the sheer quantity of releases. When you start to think about your backlog, you probably have done one of two things. You've either put every single game that you want to play and that you own but you haven't played, or you do own but you want to replay it and you shove it all into an Excel list. Or you do the other option, which is typically you just find 20 games that are in your Steam library that you haven't played and you just go, I'm going to start there. These could be decent choices depending on the type of person that you are, but given that only a few years ago it was the case that we were only playing maybe 5 of them a year if we were lucky, somehow we're meant to have the free time as adults to play through 20 somehow. I don't know about you, but I don't think that's going to be happening. Yes, we definitely live within a great time for gaming, specifically for developers and the ability for gamers to buy experiences at a good rate, and also, experience plenty of different games that they wish from the last 3 to 5 decades. But it also brings us to the big pivotal issue, which is having so many games and so little time to play them. It creates a never-ending list, and the thing is as well is that we have no intention, when we think about it, of ever stopping creating or adding more to this list. We aren't making a list of games that we want to play before we die. We're just making a list of games that the whole function of their entire design is to get closer to the completion so that we can then add even more anyway down the line, and you can then just add more games that are probably just mediocre experiences that you're not really interested in playing, but you want to just say that you've played them anyway. This system is set up perfectly to incentivize overconsumption and unfiltered purchasing from players who see great deals but have also got faith in the recommendations that Steam are going to give you, or just your favorite YouTuber might. When we think about the gaming backlog, it's clearly about one thing. It's the desire to experience more, and by definition, buy more, as, to get those experiences that we're talking about. The system isn't set up for us to be experiencing true works of art, or enjoying and breaking down what it means for the very thing that we're enjoying. It's designed solely from the ground up to get us to buy more, spend more time at our screens looking at games, and never really question what we're playing in the first place and, coming up with delusional takes about them. A lot of us are probably a part of the median player on Steam, the one that hasn't played 50% of their library. The average is 32, but the actual most common statistic was 50%. That means that so many of our purchases on Steam are literally going to waste and will never be played. The answer to this, though, you may think, is the gaming backlog. This could be true. However, you also need to change your habits when it comes around purchasing games, giving into summer sales and Black Friday deals and more. You can only lower that number by either forcefully playing through titles that you might have now changed your mind on ever wanting to play anyway. And again, this ends up feeding into the idea of just playing a game solely for one thing instead of the enjoyment of playing it. Alternatively, we could change our standards for purchasing new titles, our unfiltered purchasing that many publishers are able to take advantage of. There's a meme that I've recently seen specifically around the Steam sales, and it's the average monkey brain consumer that I think is pretty interesting. They end up seeing the price of a game that's discounted to $29.99, and they don't even think about buying it then, but then they see the same game months later for the exact same price, but it claims to be reduced by $60. This is technically a practice that is considered illegal, and most companies don't do this. However, it doesn't mean that there aren't loopholes for doing such a thing. For example, a game might put itself at $29.99 for 3 months of the year, but then they know that the Steam sale is up around the corner, so they decide to put it up to $50 to $60 for the next few months, so that at the Steam sale they can get around the loophole and actually, use it properly, so that they can then claim that the original price that they were showing you just a few months ago is now the discounted one. You're being manipulated by legal loopholes of extremely unethical business practices. This meme shows us that us as people are very simplistic when it comes to our love of a sale. We love the idea of saving money. I love the idea of seeing a camera lens that, you've been eyeing up for ages, and then it's on Amazon for £300 cheaper, and it's like, wow, that is an absolutely outstanding deal, I must buy it. But it's kind of only a deal because, there's a little bit of money off of it, but you're still spending the money and the company is still probably making a profit anyway. You may have saved some money, but it depends on your actual utility of the item. These companies are still going to be making money out of you nonetheless, and you're going to be losing money in the process, and then it's going to be a coin toss of whether or not you're even going to be playing the title in the first place. No company takes better advantage of the gaming backlog system and our monkey brain activities like Steam. This company has a monopoly on the PC gaming platform. Not because they've done any bad tricks necessarily, to get rid of competitors for example, or handicap any of them in any way, but simply because there isn't really a better product on the market besides maybe GOTY, but that's about it. You have access to thousands of games, a UI that makes sense, doesn't try to go over the top with anything, and just makes the games the main focus for the most part. It's a platform that's very well known as well for its sales. I wouldn't be surprised if one of the biggest crossover pieces of information that builds someone's gaming backlog is their access to the Steam Summer Sale. Steam hosts various amounts of sales throughout the year, but none of them are as well known as this one. This is the sale of the year typically. The reason for this is that typically you also get amazing deals. For example, this year I ended up spending £165 on this sale, and I picked up 15 games, which is insane. It makes getting into games really cheap and really doable, however it also comes at the cost of getting people to pick up many games they probably won't even end up playing in the first place and will sit in their library staring at them to make you feel guilty about the money that you've just spent. As I said, they host many sorts of these types of deals all throughout the year. We find ourselves drawn to these sorts of deals, and it heavily promotes both overconsumption, mismanagement of our own money, and stacking our backlog. They'll bundle games together so that if you want to pick up, let's say, one Fallout game, you know what, just for an extra £30 you could end up picking up every single one. It is a great option. It allows you to build a backlog that, has a lot of games in it, but also it creates even more overwhelm for what is the next title that you will check out. I know I used to be in the sort of camp that used to believe, just picking up as many games for as cheap as possible is a great idea, and to an extent I still do it. Obviously, like I said, I spent £165, but I did also try and go out of my way to really focus on games that I actually want to check out and want to play deeply, and have been on my list for a while. What Steam does when it comes to bundling in games together so often ends up doing nothing more than creating a daunting task to take on with the backlog. You might be focused on wanting to play one game, you're halfway through it and then you see a great game on a great deal, and your friend just so happened to have told you to pick it up and that you'll love it if you do. What ends up happening? You end up stopping playing that game that you were first getting into so that you can check out the next one. Now, when you try to jump back into that old game, for some reason, you just struggle doing so. All the same processes that you're having to do from the last time are just getting a bit annoying that you have to go through them yet again. They're really small details to mention, but this is the sort of thing. I've seen videos discussing this topic about how so many people end up wanting to get into a game, but they've played the beginning of it so many times that they can't be asked to ever touch the game ever again. Steam is the company of the gaming backlog. Generally speaking, I do love Steam. A lot of what they've been able to do when it comes to just being able to give consistent sales towards players so they can actually get into great games for low prices, but also it constantly pushes onto the storefront so many more things that, just aren't that great. They aren't things that you want to check out necessarily, and, they don't do well in those regards. I get that they are a business and that they want to push their games on the storefront. They want to make you go into the storefront the moment you launch into it and everything like that. However, again, this just builds up this sense of overwhelm, this sense of just constant games being added to the backlog of things that you should try, things that you should play, blah, 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 and it just builds up to just being nothing more than just an absurd amount of titles to check out. The only thing though is that this only solves one part of this issue. We can focus on how we pick up games and how we go about purchasing them and being aware of these issues, but also we need to think about the other issue, which is treating most games like a race instead of just, experiencing them. When we look at our backlog, we typically see lots of titles. For me, my shortlist is the Arkham games, the Metal Gear Solid franchise, Oblivion, Morrowind, Fallout 4, Mafia 3, The Long Dark, Outer Wilds, Project Zomboid, and plenty more. That is very literally the tip of the iceberg. What happens with this gaming system though, of the backlog, is that we end up just looking at these things as nothing more as things we need to get through so that, you can play the next game on that list. Not because we actually want to experience anything from them, but simply because, again, we don't want to feel as if we've wasted our money and as if they're just sitting there in our library unplayed. We end up looking at them as things that we need to complete, instead of enjoying and experiencing. It ends up taking joy out of the picture entirely. It forces us to rush through games and just get through them because simply we want to get on to the next one. So let's finally talk about how you can rethink your backlog, rethink about the way that you purchase games, and how to actually focus on enjoying the games that you're playing. The first thing that we need to do is tackle our purchasing habits and being intentional with them. What I've started to do when it comes to being more intentional with my purchasing power is pretty similar to a rule that you'll hear from a lot of people when they talk about getting a first tattoo, which is to sit on it and wait for 3 years, and if you still want it by then you know what, go for it. However, 3 years is obviously a little bit extreme for many of us when it comes to playing a game and choosing to pick up one anyway, so we can shorten that window. However, if you're wanting to get a game that isn't a PlayStation exclusive title for cheap, then yeah, maybe 3 weeks might actually be worth it for you. For me, this figure is roughly 6 months. Normally, if it's just a phase or just the hype of something, then you know what, I will just consider no longer thinking about it. Typically, it's gone by then, and I no longer remember the game exists. The amount of games that have come out over the last 2 years that I've forgotten even exist until they pop up in either a video that I'm watching, or they randomly pop up on a storefront for only £4. Allow yourself time to think, and if you still want to check out that game, then go for it. I will caveat this with the likes of, Helldivers 2 at the beginning of the year. Even though I don't play the game now and I haven't touched it in a very long time at this point, it was worth checking out, especially when it released, because it was actually a fun experience to have, and it was probably one of the most enjoyable that I've had with my friends in a very long time. Sometimes you can choose to break this rule, but it's called learning to be skillful with your hesitation and knowing when to allow yourself to cave in. I also do something else which is going to be considered insane to many in the gaming space, which is I stopped watching a lot of gaming videos. I found one of the biggest drivers for me to check out new games is videos, which can be a great bonus, obviously, to find great ones that you wish to check out, but you can also learn about everything and everyone's take about any game, and you could end up loving an experience that other people have told you is awful, or you could be told by a creator that you're going to really enjoy this game and you may trust their opinion, and it turns out that it was a bit of a letdown for you. So take it all onto yourself and just think on your next purchase. Make it a big deal to you. Don't just pick up something out of random moments of, just desire and then end up forgetting that you own it. Spend some time and consume consciously. Spend some time actually looking into the game that you want to play. Whether it's just, maybe it is watching some videos. Maybe it is just, looking at some reviews of the game, just double checking, seeing if it's any good, seeing if it matches up with any of the games that you've previously enjoyed. Making it a little bit of work for yourself to ensure that it's going to be something that you actually want to check out, and maybe allotting some time for it. The next thing is to create a list of the next 5 games that you want to play. Not the next 50 that you're interested in, but actually look at the games that you own already and actually sit and think about it for a while and draw up a plan of what games you actually wish to play. Once you have this list, you can change it in the future, but ideally, you'll just let it exist and just play through the list over time. Enjoy the titles and allow yourself to hit game 5 after, 3 years of playing. What I've found a massive deal that helped me with this idea in particular is just saying, I can't think about adding any other games until I've at least played 3 of these titles. This might sound backwards to the idea that I mentioned earlier when it comes to, having tons of games to play and just playing them to get through a list. However, I believe that this works because if you're being truly thoughtful about the 5 games you put on this list, they're already games that you're genuinely interested in. And also, I'm not saying that you have to go through it. I'm not going to tell you that you have to push yourself to get through the entire game. If you don't enjoy a game, you can DNF the game. It's fine. You don't have to play it. And a big thing that I found that works for me, I do this in reading personally. I typically have a 3-book rotation system. So I have 1 book that is fiction, then I have 2 non-fiction books. One will probably be a bit more self-helpy, the other one may be history, whatever it might be. And I end up thinking to myself, if there's a book there that's sat there and I'm just like, never wanting to pick it up, then I'll swap it out. However, I almost did swap out a book that I absolutely loved called Billy Summers at one point, so I wouldn't recommend it 100% of the time, but sometimes it is a good system to use. And also, one of the big things for me is that it can push you to just play a game for the chance of just seeing if the game is any good. You don't have to think about playing the next sequel right away, or if there's another 60 games left to get through. Just play a game, let's say, check out God of War. And then, I don't have to jump into Ragnarok right away. I can give it time. I could give it 5-10 years to do it. It doesn't matter. For those interested, my current list when it comes to that 5 games is Assassin's Creed Origins, which is what I'm currently playing through now. You'll find a video about it very soon. Snake Eater, when that release finally comes out. God of War, GTA 5 Story Mode, and Project Zomboid. 2 of those games are titles that I've already played before, but 3 of them are ones that I've always wanted to check out and I do own already. That's what I personally want to focus on when it comes to my gaming experience, playing a select handful of games that I really enjoy and not just getting into them for the sake of playing a new game. If I want to play something that I've checked out before, screw it, why shouldn't I? So create a list of 5 games, choose the titles that stick out the most for you, and the ones that you truly just want to sit and try and enjoy. However, for you to really do this properly, we need to talk about the next stage of this in my plan for you, which is allowing yourself time to actually enjoy games, by not focusing on completing them, but simply exploring them as you see fit. I don't know about others, but sometimes I have this feeling of I need to play this way, or as if I'm playing the game incorrectly. For example, as I spoke about earlier with RDR2, I loved my time playing through the game on the first occasion. I loved my time on the second partial playthrough that I've done, and the third partial playthrough, and all of them have been mildly different from one another, and that's because I've been able to experience them in different ways and been really intentional with how I'm going into those games instead. I've had moments though where I'm playing them and I feel like I'm meant to be playing it a different way, and as if I'm apparently playing the game wrong because I chose to, go and play the story primarily, and I should have overridden this entire thought process. It's like, no, I'm just playing the game as I wish to play it. I don't want to force myself to go out exploring for the sake of it, and I want to just feel as if I want to do it. On my next playthroughs of the game, I found myself doing that. I actually was in the state of mind to go, I'm going to spend some time in this world. I'm going to ride slowly. I'm going to walk around in the forest. I'm going to do hunting. I'm going to do side content. This feeling, though, comes from disconnecting from the more validation-focused reasons for playing through games. Simply put, to be able to tick it off the list and maybe be able to tell others that you've played it. There is some people out there who, for some reason, think that they can brag about having played loads of games. Each to their own. But yeah, overall, I think a lot of people also just don't want to feel as if they've wasted their money after, putting 50 hours of your life into a game that, you may not have enjoyed, but it costs you £20 to pick up. We need to allow ourselves time to genuinely enjoy playing games again. And one of the first places you can go when it comes to this discussion is stop thinking about ticking off the next game that you're going to get through. Just play games and try and enjoy their amazing experiences. When I was a kid, I had more options for what games to play than others probably did in the decade prior to that. However, having grown up with 2 older siblings who played games, we typically just ended up getting a game and it would be whatever they were playing. I had to check out and play, and typically it meant that there was only a few games ever coming into the household in a given year. The first reason is obviously because when I was younger, I wasn't the one with the money, and it was the case that I could only ask for a certain amount of games in a given year, or hope that I got them for my birthday or for Christmas, for example. So it was the case that in a given year, maybe 2 to 3 to maybe 5 games at maximum in a given year was what I expected. And, maybe even into 18 months territory, where I'm just playing a game exclusively for that amount of time. We just played them and experienced them together, and it was an enjoyable process. And also back then when we were playing games, I don't know about you, but a lot of the time it wasn't just me playing it by myself. I was playing it with a sibling, or I was playing it with a friend. Like, one of my biggest, fondest gaming experiences was playing Halo 3's campaign with my friend Jake on our couch in our old house. And that experience is still above all, one of the better ones when it comes to games. And that has nothing to do with having the most modern release and blah 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 blah, or having loads of ability to find loads of games and all this and have tons of choice and choose the masterpiece. I just played what was there. That was it. I feel as if in the modern day we're able to get games for such cheap prices that quite often you can find out about a new game on almost a daily basis and find out about really niche titles. Again, for many, that is actually a great thing, and kind of is amazing when you think about it. But also, it makes us focus on way too many games when we're probably only going to be able to play through a handful in a given year. You spend your time finding out about a game that is right for you, that you want to pick up, or that you've heard is amazing, but you've never given it a shot. So you choose to give it a shot, and you spend the next year and a half on horseback, finding out about the plan that Dutch has. Or you dedicate an entire year of your life to exploring the lands between. Focusing on only playing a handful of games in a given year allows us to enjoy and truly pick apart the world that we're playing and enjoy the experience that we're playing. It would allow more of us to connect to many other parts of media to, actually experience the thing that we've paid for or just wanting to check out in some way. It allows us to dedicate more than just a week of our lives towards playing a game and actually allow it to ingrain itself into who we are as people. It's kind of what we used to do with games when we were kids, and it kind of is what a lot of people used to do with movies and shows and all these things. It was a part of people's personalities, but now we have so many options. You kind of have to be watching whatever the new thing is or whatever this is, blah 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 blah, play this game over here, all these things, and it means that you're just kind of all collectively tiny little things and you forget about half of what you've consumed. I guess where this video has been going though this whole time is what I said in the opening of this video. So many games, so little time. And this is truly what I feel as if we need to come to terms with. The gaming backlog is only flawed when you look at it as a genuine possible task for you to get through. It's a flawed system, as it puts the emphasis on playing a game you might not even enjoy for the sake of getting it off the backlog and saying that you've been able to play it, instead of actually enjoying games that you truly want to play. It doesn't take into account that more games are getting added to the gaming marketplace every single day, to the point where it's almost impossible for us to ever play all of the games that will ever be out, ever. And yeah, when our time is ever more diminishing, it makes it far more required to be intentional with where we're spending it. We're given less and less time every second we age, and we need to spend less time doing things unintentionally, such as playing games for the sake of it, watching a video like this, or just doing anything you might feel for a brief moment. Question, why you're doing it. Just think, am I actually enjoying the thing, or am I getting anything out of it? Being more intentional doesn't actually make things more stressful, as I feel like a lot of people probably think it does. It makes consuming the things that you are consuming, though, far more enjoyable, as you're no longer just rotting your brain away for the sake of something that you don't really care about. We as people and as players need to come to terms that our time is limited and we only can play a set amount of games in our entire lifetime. So why not focus on just having fun, experiencing beautiful stories, and having a good time? With that all being said though, I hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. I've been focusing far more on intentionality over the last few months and focusing on making content that I would actually watch myself again, and just making sure that I'm adding more things into the mix that I enjoy doing. So if you did enjoy this video, please make sure to consider leaving it a like and subscribing to the channel as well. And I do have a Patreon as well if you are interested, link down below. You can get behind the scenes to how these videos get made, scripted and whatnot. Ask me questions, whatever it might be, special ranks in the Discord, all these sorts of things, and early access to videos. So if that does interest you, make sure to check it out as well. And with that all being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good one.